Hi guys, in this video we're going to talk about the background to the Libyan civil war and its implications for Libya and the West. Libya is in chaos. General Khalifa Haftar's attack on Tripoli has failed, bringing Libya's 6-year bloody civil war to a stalemate. How did one of the best developed, most stable countries in all of Africa devolve into a lawless nation with terrorists and human traffickers? What role do foreign powers play? And how has the chaos in Libya served as a catalyst to affect the politics not just in Libya, but in all of Europe? All that in this video. Just before we start, don't forget to subscribe for more political analysis videos every weekend and hit that bell notification while you're at it. The fall of Libya is one of those things that will go down in history as the day that history changed. Because the fall of Libya did not just turn the wheel of history for Libya, but for Europe and the world. This conflict started back in 2011, when Muammar Gaddafi was still in power. But one cannot understand the Libyan civil war today without understanding the fall of Muammar Gaddafi and the NATO intervention. In 2011, Gaddafi had been in power for 42 years. He had a strange ideological mix that combined anti-imperialism with socialism, Arab nationalism, and Pan-Africanism. Domestically, that meant nationalizing the Western-controlled oil industry. And although Gaddafi was definitely an authoritarian dictator, he did use the oil wealth of Libya to benefit his people. Education was free, healthcare was free, Libyan families got cheap loans to buy their own homes, and despite the fact that Libya is a desert country, Gaddafi was able to use oil money to build a massive irrigation scheme for agriculture. And the result of these policies was that Libya achieved the highest Human Development Index in all of Africa and became more prosperous and stable than its neighbors. But it was Gaddafi's foreign policy that made him an enemy of the West. Gaddafi saw himself as the leader of the global anti-imperialist movement, and so he sponsored dozens of terrorist groups from the IRA in Northern Ireland to communists and Islamists in the Philippines. And after the Lockerbie bombing in Scotland was linked to Gaddafi, the US bombed Libya and imposed sanctions throughout the 1990s. Gaddafi began to feel the pinch, and when the US invaded Iraq and Saddam Hussein fell, Gaddafi realized that he could be next. And so he made a deal. He accepted responsibility for the Lockerbie bombing, gave up his weapons of mass destruction, and opened up the country and its oil reserves to foreign investment from the West. He even sponsored the presidential campaign of French President Nicolas Sarkozy. Gaddafi thought he was now the darling of the West. But boy, was he wrong. Then in 2011, everything changed. The Arab Spring had come to Libya, and protests erupted against Gaddafi's dictatorial rule. But unlike in Egypt or Tunisia, the protests very quickly became militarized. You see, unlike the Western media portrayed it at the time, this was not so much a peaceful nationwide uprising, but a militant rebellion by Islamist and tribal militias concentrated in the eastern region of Libya, reflecting the historical regional divide between West and East. And this division will also form the basis for the civil war today. Within weeks, half the country was under rebel control and parts of the army had defected to the rebels. Gaddafi then began to step up the violence, and soon he had taken back most of Libya and had surrounded the eastern city of Benghazi. It was at this point that the rebels realized that the jig was up, and the only way to stop Gaddafi was to call for foreign intervention. And so the rebels began to claim that Gaddafi was about to unleash a bloodbath on Benghazi. And this was widely reported in the media. In fact, before the rebels called for foreign intervention, the word bloodbath had only been used 19 times in newspapers. Yet in the following week, it was used 171 times. This, despite the fact that other cities taken back by Gaddafi's forces had not experienced any bloodbaths. It was this sloppy reporting by the media of an impending bloodbath that was used as the justification for foreign intervention. And so a UN resolution was passed calling for a no-fly zone, as well as any other means except occupation to be used to protect civilian lives. And so in March 2011, the NATO bombing of Libya began. The NATO intervention was justified by the need to protect civilians, yet the actions that were taken were made with the intent for regime change. Repeatedly, Gaddafi attempted to negotiate a ceasefire, which would have saved civilian lives, but repeatedly NATO and the rebel militias refused. And this is important because Libya under Gaddafi was a one-man show, and so Libya had no institutions to build a long-lasting democracy on, and the opposition had no coherent set of demands. By not having a negotiated settlement and a peaceful transition of power, NATO created the conditions for chaos to erupt in Libya and for the country to be awash with weapons and militias. A negotiated settlement could have prevented a power vacuum and the massive inflow of weapons into the country and the forming of militias who would form the basis for the civil war to come. But this action was never motivated by human rights. Despite Gaddafi opening up to the West, the French wanted him gone. You see, Sarkozy had signed a $10 billion weapons deal with Gaddafi, and Gaddafi did not deliver. On top of that, leaked emails from WikiLeaks show that France had key oil interests in Libya, and Gaddafi's plan for a gold-backed Pan-African currency threatened France's interests. You see, most of the former French colonies in Africa don't control their own currency. Their central banks and gold reserves are located in France, and they share a common currency, the Central African franc and the West African franc, which is regulated by France. By creating a new Pan-African currency, Gaddafi threatened French interests in Africa. He had to go. But what about the United States? America as a nation did not have a major stake in Libya as such, but the Arab League and the rebels lobbied Hillary Clinton for US involvement, and so it was Hillary Clinton who convinced Obama to intervene in Libya. After 7 months, it was game over. Gaddafi was forced to flee and was found hiding in a drainpipe. He was beaten up and then shot.
We came, we saw, he died.
And the Libya that was left behind was one with no stable government and filled with armed militias, the perfect conditions for a civil war. And this was exacerbated by the transitional government. After the fall of Gaddafi, every member of a militia was promised a government salary equivalent to double that of a teacher's salary. In a country with high unemployment and no future, this incentivized every young man to join a militia in order to gain access to these benefits. And so militia membership exploded from just over 25,000 after the fall of Gaddafi to over 250,000, and that in a nation of just 6 million people. In July 2012, elections were held, and a new transitional parliament called the General National Congress, or GNC, was elected with the task of writing a new constitution within 18 months. But one of the key factions in this parliament was the Justice and Construction Party, the Libyan version of the Muslim Brotherhood, an Islamist political party. This party, as well as other groups with ties to Islamic militias, began making proposals that would derail the process of writing a constitution. Things like implementing Sharia law, compulsory hijabs, and gender segregation. On top of that, the government still had no control over the various militias that were running around the country. Unsurprisingly, it failed to meet the deadline for the constitution. Then in 2014, when new elections were held, a new parliament called the House of Representatives, or HOR, was elected. But voter turnout was less than 18%, and so the GNC argued that this new government had no legitimacy and refused to hand over power. And so suddenly, Libya had two governments: the GNC, based in Tripoli in the west, and the HOR, based in Tobruk in the east. Enter General Khalifa Haftar. He was a general under Gaddafi back in the 80s, but fell out with Gaddafi and ended up living in the United States as an American citizen. After the revolution, he came back to Libya and formed the Libyan National Army, which sounds like a professionalized military, but is really just another coalition of militias. When the GNC refused to leave power, General Haftar tried to organize a military coup. When this failed, he fled to the east, and so the Libyan civil war began. In 2015, the UN tried to organize a power-sharing deal which created the Government of National Accord, or GNA, which is now the UN-recognized government of Libya. But when his rival was appointed as defense minister in the GNA, Haftar pulled out of the deal, continuing the civil war. And as the two sides emerged, foreign powers began backing the different sides. Haftar and his Libyan National Army are supported by Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, France, and Russia. Haftar presented himself as the secular alternative to the Islamists in the GNA, and the strongman who could stabilize Libya and fight terrorism. For this reason, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE support him, because they don't want their own countries to be destabilized by Muslim Brotherhood elements. On top of that, the Gulf states realize that as long as they can keep this war going, Libyan oil stays off the market. Less oil means higher oil prices. Since the fall of Gaddafi, Libya has produced far less oil. Because most of Libya's oil is in the eastern region controlled by Haftar, French oil company Total has made a $450 million deal to gain access to Libya's oil, explaining France's involvement, while Russia sees it as an opportunity to undermine NATO. On the other side, the GNA is supported by Libya's former colonial master, Italy, as well as Turkey and Qatar. Italy is dependent on Libyan gas and wants to prevent the massive inflow of migrants from Libya, and thus believes that the GNA is best poised to secure its interests. Turkey is interested because they signed a deal with the GNA to share an exclusive economic zone in the maritime waters between Turkey and Libya. This means that Turkey and Libya will have exclusive access to the oil, gas, and other resources located in these waters. Qatar is a geopolitical rival of Saudi Arabia, and so naturally supports the side which is against the Saudi-backed Haftar. As for the United States, officially, it supports the UN-backed government of the GNA, but Trump has shown that he is sympathetic to the strong man he sees in General Haftar. With the battle lines drawn, Haftar gained the upper hand and quickly gained control of 2/3 of the country, launching an attack on Libya's capital Tripoli last year. That assault has now been pushed back, bringing the Libyan civil war to a stalemate. But I don't see much improving from this. Multiple attempts at a peace deal have failed. Why is it so hard for them to come to an agreement? Here's the thing. Libya has a massive sovereign wealth fund worth $67 billion. But this fund has been frozen since Gaddafi lost power. Whoever wins the war will gain access to this massive fund. The war persists because the prize for winning is so great. The war persists because foreign powers have too much to gain. The war persists because both sides are made up of fractious coalitions of militias that could turn on each other the moment they no longer have a common enemy. But the consequences of this war have been far worse than anybody anticipated after the fall of Gaddafi, both for Libya and Europe. In all the chaos created by the civil war, ISIS and other extremist groups were able to gain a foothold. Gaddafi's hometown of Sirte was occupied for almost a full year by ISIS forces before being recaptured by the GNA. Libya, which was once one of the most stable countries in all of Africa, is now the home of human traffickers and slave traders. The massive flow of migrants across the Mediterranean into Europe is a direct consequence of the destabilization of Libya. European countries in NATO bombed Libya, and now they pay the price with the migrant crisis which has destabilized Europe. It was the migrant crisis in 2015 which fueled the rise of right-wing populist parties across Europe. It was the migrant crisis which heightened fears of immigration that contributed to the Brexit vote in 2016, destabilizing the European Union. This shows that Western foreign policy has consequences. The chickens have come home to roost. Libya is dead, and the vultures are feasting on its carcass. To learn about the Yemen civil war and the separatist crisis there, check out my last video. Thank you to my Patreons who made this video possible. Like, share, and subscribe, 'cause this was my take.